Hello there guys, it's Joey and this is a new requested item for the store. This is prayer beads for the god or lord Hades of the Underworld from the Greek pantheon. So I have said before that I will continue to make the top-down videos like this for the prayer beads because me holding them up is awkward basically, and if I can show them more fully this way then we stick to the old style of video. I don't do that for many videos these days, but the prayer beads ones kind of merit it a little bit more just for visual presentation. So these were a request, and the request was for a black and gold aesthetic, which we have adhered to, as well as then, you know, going forth and deciding which black beads, which gold beads, which energies to bring forth, which charms best represented that. So we have a black jet bead and a gold hematite with a hematite with a bonded gold overlay, I believe. And I'm going to talk about the energies for Hades and bringing those into a kind of prayer bead setting. Then we're going to talk about the energies of the particular crystals for the beads. The beads are actual crystals, it's not glass or anything, they are a jet and a hematite, a golden hematite. So the Lord Hades set was actually really interesting. He came forth really strongly, and I've actually discussed this recently in private with a friend about how present Hades was as a god of the underworld, as a masculine energy. That's quite unusual for me. I can feel my hands like heating up the minute I start talking about Hades as well, so I think it's just this natural underworld bond that I feel for death gods and goddesses. I just naturally gel with them, I guess. So I talked about Lord Hades the unseen in another video, but we'll touch upon those key points because I think it's important to. Lord of the Underworld, Lord of Death, he has a strong sovereign energy, he's a king and a lover. I found it very interesting, the discussion around working with Hades as the worship of an imperfect god, and the kind of interplay that merited within spiritual paths, because Hades wasn't unrelatable to many people, particularly in modern circles. He had passion and he had desire and he had a temper, but he wasn't all bad either, because I think there is a presentation of Hades as one of the gods of the underworld, as frequently happens to gods and goddesses of death, that they just get this really negative portrayal, and I don't think it's merited at all. For me, his energy is very stoic, very balanced, very full of sovereignty, and a sort of King of Swords energy to him. He's very structured and regal, and he likes the law, and the way things are the way things are for a reason, and he kind of represents to me natural law, in that he gets very angry when people try to cross over into the realm of the dead, or they try to take souls away from the realm of the dead, and that to me is trying to keep a natural balance within the cosmos, within the universe. That's his domain, he has sovereignty over it. People are trying to basically steal from him, but they could also completely upset the natural balance of things by messing around with death and people who are supposed to have moved on. But then he's not without kind of like his lenient side. There is the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, which is indicative of his mercy, although his wife Persephone is said to have sort of made the plea on the behalf of the lovers who were separated so young and so early, and it was only through the distrust of Orpheus that he lost Eurydice again a second time. He was supposed to leave the cave and all away from the underworld and not look back, and as long as he made it back and didn't look back, he would have his wife once more, and he failed to do so. But that is kind of the mercy and the heart, I guess, of Lord Hades, who has this very interesting dynamic with Persephone, and there are kind of varying myths about whether or not she willingly went with him or she was godnapped, basically, and she became his queen and she remained his queen. And there's a story with the pomegranates that he offered her pomegranates, and she ate 6 seeds or 3 seeds, depending on where you're getting the interpretation of the myth from. And as a result of that, she was to split her time between the underworld with her husband and then above world with her mother Demeter, who had been implacable. She couldn't be placated from the loss of her daughter, and that's the explanation of the seasons for when Demeter was in sorrow. It was winter. There are other stories about in Ovid that Hades pursued and would have won the nymph Minth had Persephone not intervened and turned her into the mint plant. The same is true of Luce, who was turned into the white poplar tree. And to me, if Persephone did not care, then I don't think she would have turned the nymphs into plants to prevent her husband from sleeping with them. It doesn't line up for me. So I think really there is a strong lover element to Hades as well. Hades was portrayed as more altruistically inclined in the mythology. He was portrayed as passive, not evil. His role was often maintaining relative balance. He ruled over the dead, forbade his subjects to leave, and became enraged when anyone did, or anyone tried to steal souls. But then we've discussed the idea before. And in the Iliad, Agamemnon suggests that we loathe Hades more than any other god, if not because he is so adamantine and unyielding. And I do get that unyielding energy from him. I get the kind of stoic king of the underworld who will not be defied. This is his realm. He may not have originally perhaps wanted the realm of the underworld. It's a little bit unclear. Again, the retelling of myths vary about whether that's just how things naturally fell or if he got the short end of the stick, sort of thing, with Tartarus being kind of portrayed as an unpleasant place most of the time. And it's some people, just because it's the realm of the dead, find it a depressing overture and decide that he didn't want to be there. But to be honest, again, why would he be so enraged about people interfering with his realm and his dictates and his rules if he wasn't fully invested, that sort of thing? So I really do feel like it's this very, I want to say like border patrol energy, like, you know, it's protecting what is his, but also protecting the natural order of things. Apologies, knocking the camera. So it's, again, it's very King of Swords energy. It's very much to do with kind of like legal ramifications, the natural order of things, the kind of natural divisions within the world. There is, of course, a death element. He has a very strong sovereign energy and lover energy as well, which I think are underplayed with death gods, and there is a very close connection between sort of a sexuality and a death energy, as I've discussed many times on the channel in different and varying forms. So we'll talk about the crystals now, the jet and the golden hematite. So jet is a protective stone, a grounding stone, an element of earth. It is associated with the base chakra and all chakras for purification elements. And we're going to be reading some bits from the Book of Stones. So Robert Simmons: for those interested in the activation of the powers of magic and interaction with the forces of the elements, jet can aid and be a protector. It assists in raising one's Shakti and allowing a portion of that fiery energy to be consciously directed by the will. It helps to draw on earth energies and to channel that powerful flow into one's desired directions. Anyone engaging in astral travel or spiritual mediumship is advised to have several pieces of jet to hold and place on the body. Purification of one's aura and protection from negative influences. Those engaged in exploration of past lives, the personal subconscious, and/or the archetypes of the collective unconscious may find that jet facilitates one's going deeper into the unknown worlds. So before we go on about jet anymore, those are some really key elements that I think really align with the energies of Hades quite well. And seeing as black was requested, and this is perhaps I'm not going to say my least used black, it might be my least used black crystal, because I usually go for obsidian or then tourmaline. Jet is not the one I reach for normally, but this one has a far earthier energy to it, a kind of groundedness, and I think that's true of Hades. Even when he's in his wrathful state, there's something very grounded about the way he conducts himself, and obviously with the idea of the underworld being underground is often portrayed, like the idea of the underworld entrances being in caves and going down into the earth and having an earth-based energy, even when the realms are sometimes conceived as being other places, like other worlds. The underworld is still under the world, so it has kind of that groundedness. And then of course jet for the travelling, the astral travelling to past lives, which has a death element association of course, as well as cleansing out the aura and being quite protective, which is a good thing to have when working with any energies really. Let's see if Nation says anything else. It holds ancient earth wisdom, speaking of roots and beginnings, natural power and elemental energy. Jet, and it has the ability to transmute negative energy into clear neutral energy. I think that's good. That neutralness, the kind of ability of jet to change negative energy into neutral is kind of where Hades is at. He takes a negative thing which people view negatively a lot of the time, which is death, and he has a sort of neutral passive energy to him on it. He is not interfering usually with the natural state of affairs. People die and he takes the souls to the underworld, or he governs over them, or in actuality he tends to govern over. They kind of get brought in a varying ways across the Styx. Jet aids one entering and exploring the inner void of creation, in which one's potential and power lies. It clears the energetic field of attachment and patterns that appear as negative experiences in one last life. It asks in return that one honestly own both one's shortcomings and one's abilities. Yeah, so it kind of puts life into perspective, and no gods put life into perspective quite as much and quite as quickly as death gods, because the minute you think you might lose your life, you get a whole lot of perspective really, really quite quickly. Alright, so let's move on to hematite. Hematite is again a root chakra, a earth element and a grounding crystal for manifestation, making the spiritual physical, which I think is nice because Hades kind of has that crossover, that kind of, he's in the realm of the dead, that kind of spiritual realm, very spirit-based, quite literally, and then he is a god and manifests on the earth as well. Hematite is one of the most effective of all stones for grounding oneself. It counteracts spaciness and confusion, helping one to see practical concerns and move forward with useful action, which, to be honest, is Hades to a T. He doesn't have time for airy-fairy ideas. For the most part, he is very practical in all manners, even when it comes to things such as his desires and basically his queen and his would-be lovers. He's very, very practical in his approaches. Asian hematite is a stone of manifest union between the spirit and the world. Its frequency is that overarching resonant field that contains the polarities of light and dark, positive and negative, higher self and shadow self, soul and body. And if that's not Hades to a T, I don't know what is. Hematite encompasses both male and female polarities, the yin and yang, creating a balanced energy that contains the opposites within the whole. I think it's nice to have that here because I think we can't really talk about Hades without mentioning Persephone at some point, so I think that kind of the king and queen energies come together, which is nice. Through my body, I ground the energies of light realms in this world, is the affirmation for hematite. I think that's kind of nice, and it kind of sort of interplay of like the soul energy, a light energy, and then the body. When the body is gone into the realm of the dead, then the light of the soul continues. So there we go. And then of course we have the gold interlaid with the hematite, which kind of brings that sovereignty, that regalness, that commanding presence overall. So then we'll just talk about the beads themselves and the charms a little bit so we can just see, because we're nearly done. I think that's plenty of information, right? I think so I was really, really pleased that I managed to find pomegranates. Oh yes, pomegranate charms. And then the little skelly bob is kind of like a hanging figure. It's very macabre. It's very matter of fact. It's kind of reminiscent of kind of like the Christian on the Jesus on the cross feel to rosary beads, but it also has a element of the dour side of the underworld. So I wanted the pomegranates here, and I wanted like the death element here for Hades, because these are both very key points of his myth. I don't think you can, and I don't think you should, discount either of these sides. The gold is there for the hints of sovereignty and regality, but Hades isn't necessarily one who feels the need to flout his sovereignty unless it is defied, which, given that their prayer beads and offering and things, is unlikely to come to the fore. Hopefully not. He's kind of scary when he's mad. But, so we didn't need to overemphasize that regality too much, because it kind of just is present within the gold lining, if you like, the gold lining of his personality and the gold lining of the beads. So the sort of the undead figure is kind of like hanging. He does kind of punish people. He does have those who are punished in undeath in his realm. So he does sort of carry out a kind of karma. But the figure is really more just about a very visual presentation of death, basically. So I really wanted to have that kind of gothic feel to the beads for the charm, for the skeleton. I really did want to bring that into it, because he is inevitably a god of death, lord of the underworld, and I don't think we need to shy away from that in our terms of our visualization. I think we need to present and respect that he is not just that, but he is that primarily, you know. So there needs to be that kind of respect of his office, and I think kind of just having a glaring reminder of death kind of works. But also, like I said, I wanted the pomegranates for the myths of Persephone, and kind of him and his noggin, his clever thinking, his planning ahead, his very grounded attitude towards something. Like, she fed the pomegranate seeds that she ate, the pomegranate seeds that he offered, he fed her. Every time I mention it with regards to Hades, people are like, no, it's Persephone, and I'm like, he offered them. Like, she didn't wander around the underworld one day and think, oh, look at this pomegranate, I think I'll eat 6 seeds. No, Hades offered that. That was his cunning, his guile, his planning, his motivation for keeping her, whatever you want to think about it, however you want to put it. But it's him that offered them. So they are very much tied to him, as is Persephone. Their energies interplay. Inseparable is the feeling I get from it. A king and a queen together at all times in the underworld. So I hope you like them, and that's it for this particular video. Many blessings.